Hello, welcome to Week 4 Business Ethics of Cross-Cultural Management. As outlined in the first lecture, globalisation has meant increasing movement of the developed world into the developing worlds in many areas of the supply chain. Organisations are increasingly outsourcing to developing countries, and this is an area of greatest cultural differences in ethical standards and moral governance. The aim of this lecture and the tutorial activities for this week is for you to understand the complexities of an organisation's towards their various constituencies around the world. In other words, it's about gaining an appreciation of the relationship between multinational organisation and their stakeholders. But most importantly, it's for you to identify the role that culture plays in the global business ethics framework. Corporate social responsibility is the concerns, the benefits versus the harm of multinational organisations' operations, actions and inactions, especially in less developed countries. Issues of corporate social responsibility hover around areas such as poverty, the use of child labour, sweatshops, lack of equal opportunity, the environment, consumers' concerns, employee safety and welfare. The question is, though, how much should multinational organisations concern themselves with social and economic effects of their decisions? At one end of the extreme, the answer to this question is that multinational organisations are really only responsible for the profit to the bottom line of their organisation. However, at the other end of the extreme is the notion that multinational organisations should anticipate and solve social needs. Of course, firms can take a stance anywhere along those two extremes. The role of stakeholders is a very complex area, particularly when we're talking about multinational organisations. International corporate social responsibility is far more complex than domestic corporate social responsibility because of the additional stakeholders in the firm's activities. Managers must weigh the rights of domestic stakeholders versus those of the host country stakeholders, and most decisions will involve a trade-off between the rights of various stakeholders, at least for the short term. For example, increasing payments to adult workers means higher costs for the organisations and decreasing their profits. On the other hand, encouraging children to go to school and not work means that in the short term, children and their families receive less money, and that has implications for how they live. In the long term, however, education means that children will have more opportunities in life. The money that is required to support organisations to ensure a clean environment therefore means less profits to the organisation, but it also means increasing living conditions for the community where that organisation is. Moving jobs overseas means less jobs for people in the home country, although better opportunities for the host country. Hence, understanding the relationship between the multinational organisation and the stakeholders is very complex. Global interdependence is a compelling factor in the global business environment, creating demands on managers to take a positive stance on issues of social responsibility, ethical behaviour, economic development and ecological protection around the world are the utmost. Managing interdependence means that managers must go beyond general issues of social responsibility and deal with the specific concerns for the multinational organisation subsidiary host country relationship. Because multinational organisations represent global interdependency, their managers at all levels must recognise that what they do has long-term implications for the socio-economic interdependence of nations. In other words, whatever the situation, there can be very powerful long-term effects of the multinational organisation's action or inaction on the fragile nature of the economic progression in the host countries. At a minimum, multinational organisations, and hence the managers that work in those organisations, should ensure that their actions will do no harm. Many practices and behaviours considered unethical or illegal in some countries are accepted ways of doing business. So let's just talk about that, because the basis of this lecture is to think about, is ethics culture free? And I'd like to give you some examples to get you to think about the role that culture plays within the ethical environment of organisations. In the US, business ethics are legalistic and universalistic. They're based on rules and regulations that apply to everyone. They are made explicit in written codes of conduct or principles displayed throughout the company. In Europe and Asia, moral standards are considered to be more consensual. Legitimate moral expectations for a company are shaped by the norms of the community. Ethics is particularistic. It's applied according to specific circumstances and strongly affected by the nature of one's social ties and obligations. Great emphasis is placed on informal social control. On the other hand, for the Japanese, the insider-outsider ethic is extremely powerful, making it difficult to do business without proper connections. Outsiders are seen not to share the same values, nor to be concerned with the welfare of the group. In Asia, Confucius serves as a moral guide, promoting the importance of authority and the collective expressed as clearly structured role relationships. Morality is more likely to be defined in terms of others, in terms of interdependence rather than independence in individualistic countries. Reciprocity results in the common practices of gift-giving and exchanging favours, of saving face and giving face. Shame serves as a powerful form of social control, and in Japan, individual responsibility has very serious implications and can often be led to a CEO committing suicide. Universalism means that the same rules apply to everyone. In the US, this has a legal compliance rather than encouraging integrity, such as a being culture. Differences in the role of government. Differences in the role of government. In Europe, for example, businesses have been largely state-owned and composed of small rather than large private organisations. Hence, the responsibility of business was more narrowly defined. The role of government has been primarily for the responsibility of the economic development and social welfare of the country. In the US, private ownership and big business put more onus and spotlight on company behaviour. Public expectations of business conduct are high, and the role of government is to foster and promote entrepreneurism and capitalism. Legal differences in the legal context, the nature of regulation and the likelihood of enforcement play an important part. For example, Germany has strict environmental laws, yet there are few laws against bribery, kickbacks and payoffs in the corporate section. In France, the Commission of Operations is a powerful watchdog over corporate areas, and the US has a strict legal framework and watchdog called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. The role of media also plays a very important part. Public scrutiny and ethical behaviour in companies has been made possible by the increased attention in the media, and this is often through the front page of newspapers. The local consumer, customers, employees, as well as shareholders all play an increasingly important role in mentoring ethical behaviour as far as stakeholders. Employees have been known to blow the whistle on their organisation for unethical behaviour. Customers can boycott companies engaged in questionable practices, and local communities have been much more active in listening on environmental protection. There's also increasing pressure to hold company boards of directors far more accountable. So hopefully through today's lecture and also accessing the tutorial activities that you're required to do, you'll come to have a better understanding that the legal and the political environment, as well as the values and beliefs of a culture, provides us with a framework to understand what ethics means and, more importantly, how ethical behaviour is enacted in different parts of the world. Thank you.